there, you guys. Welcome back to my channel. I'm loving this inspiration book. I've got a variety already started for different moods, and today is page 4. And since I did gentle and then dreamy and then busy and loud, I thought I'd do something completely different with this one. I want to use some of my favorite combinations of Indian yellow, Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold, and magenta, or a different red, I'll have to see, but I will list all my supplies below in the notes. I'm going to start by taping up the coiled center so that I don't get paint on that and make the book not function. That's really the only reason why I do that. It's not really it does sort of frame the inside edge a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I flip the book so that the bulk of it is leaving me only a thin amount on the right so that it's easier for my hand to deal with. I've pulled out all sorts of stamps, not sure which ones I'm going to use, but I do want to do a stamping background, and I'm using a permanent ink pad, and it's a little blacker than I really would have liked. I should find one that's a little lighter but also permanent. But anyway, it is what it is. I don't want to touch the outside edge of the stamp on the ink pad, and when I put it down, I'm only pressing in the middle because I don't want the outline of that ink stamp showing up on the page. I'm looking for a smudgy, busy background, but it is a little blacker than I want, so I'll deal with that later. There's always ways to fix things. And but for now, I'm just doing random pattern because instead of doing my typical mark making with crayons, sometimes I do like to use stamps. I do like this one a lot. It's more scratchy. It's not quite as cloudy. So I'm doing that more on the outside edges, just for some different interest. I do like them. They're not as smudgy and dirty. They're a little more clear. And the reason why I don't like having everything too smudgy and dark is because I want to use some bright, happy colors. And the more I have this smudgy background, the more it makes the colors smudgy. So I'll have to deal with that. I do like this new one, though. Look at how fun those marks are. I'm pressing a little harder on them because I do like them. So again, this is just paper. It's acrylic. You can fix anything. I decided to put the dots away. It's busy enough already. What I'm going to do is tone that back a bit. And the reason why I did this first, though, you might think, why would I do that if I'm going to just paint over it? But I've got a technique here I'm going to show you, which is the name of this page 4 is making scrapes so that we can do some fun things with them later. And the only way that you can make the effect work with painting scrape or doing scrapes into a paint is by having two things: a dark background underneath and a thick coat of paint that's opaque on the top. So I am covering up some of the busyness, but the other purpose, the main purpose, is that I want to scrape in with a toothpick some grooves and make some patterns, and then they will leave indentation. And what happens is it scrapes away. As I scribble around the page, it will scrape away the white paint and reveal the color below. So it will look like I took a lead pencil and drew around. And then the other thing is, see how it's revealing, it's lifting the white paint and it's revealing the graphite look below, which is really fun because the graphite below also changes. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's light, and I do love this technique a lot. So it allows a reveal from a surface below, gives you a drawing pattern of these circles, and it also gives you grooves and channels because this is engraved into the paint. So it allows, once it's dry, to have these little grooves and channels for paint flow to go inside, and it alters the colors of those channels. So there's a lot to learn on this one today. It is a technique I do often, and I really enjoy it. It's very effective. So like I say, I've covered up some of the mess below, but I needed that mess in order to do this technique. So none of that was a waste. There's still a little bit too smudgy of an effect there, so I'm going to paint over very softly. I've got a big brush and I've got a healthy dose of that white paint, but I'm just spreading it around lightly. So I'm covering up more of the smudges that I don't want. I'm leaving alone the areas that I scraped. And I'm leaving revealed a lot of that second stamp that I use because, as you can see, it's quite fun. It's not so smudgy. It's more crisp pattern and detail. So I've got quite a bit of an underpainting here now, which is what I call this. It's got stamping in there for interest and busyness, and it's also got now these new grooves that look like a graphite pencil scribbled around the page. And I'm just zooming in there because I want to show you I'm just turning the brush so that I just enhance some of the details of that stamp without smudging over it completely. Now that it's completely dry, I'm going to protect the paper with a coat of matte medium. And I also want to make it a little bit more white and smudgy and cloudy in certain areas. What I'm going to do, even though I love the background as it is, I want to shoot some of those details from the stamps further into the background. So as I add this transparent matte medium around the page, I'm going to get that dispenser that's got fluid white paint in it. And I'm going to dab some of the white paint in areas so that when I smudge this around with the brush, it creates a little bit of a cloudy background and shoots some of that stamp detail further into the background. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to use the dispenser with the white and I'm going to drop some droplets of white, fluid white here and there and spread that around just to shoot some of the detail in the back and go for a more dreamy effect as a background. Keeping in mind that all those grooves I've scribbled, those are going to become very apparent once I add colors. So again, I'm using this white, which is already fluid, mixed while the matte medium is still wet, and it just makes it slightly cloudier. So now I can put some bright, happy colors on top, and it's not going to look dirty. Just fanning it lightly in all directions, because I don't want to have brush strokes. Wipe off that brush, the excess paint, put it in my jar of clear water, and now now it's completely dry. I've sped this up so you don't get bored. It is completely dry, and I think you can tell by the look of it, the page is already quite a bit thicker, which is great because it's more like a canvas background now. So when I put a lot of, because in this book I like to play with paint flow and a lot of fluidity in water, it's good to have that paper background protected so it doesn't buckle and warp. And this way, when I put paint on now, it sits on the surface of all that matte medium and paint. And I'm going to use my fingers to smudge it around the page because I want a real smudgy look. And as I'm doing it as well, I'm pushing that paint into those grooves. See, I'm pushing really hard so that it'll sit right inside the grooves, which is right at the paper level. So you can see it's enhancing some of the scratch marks that I made. And it is a fun technique. You could do this with any kind of scratching pattern you like. You could scribble, which I sometimes do, wording or phrases. There's no limit to the possibilities. The whole idea here is to teach you that you can put a busy background, paint a thick coat of white paint over it, and then scrape in whatever your heart's desire to make a background to work with as an underpainting. I used a wet wipe there with rubbing alcohol on it to smudge the edges because, again, I want all of this, the transition between colors, I would like them to be dreamy and fuzzy and cloudy. And even as they overlap, see, I could actually just stick with Indian yellow. You see how it hit when I smudged it around, it became a lemon yellow. And what's left there looks like the Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold. And now as I add my crimson red color, I don't mind if I overlap a bit because that overlap becomes a nice orange color. So these colors do work really well together. They're one of my favorite combinations. And again, and as I'm spreading around in certain areas, I'm pressing harder. Like for example, that I just smudged it back, but before I smudged it back with the wet wipe, I pressed that crimson color into the grooves, and now even though I've wiped off with rubbing alcohol the top surface, the circle groove is remaining red. I like that every groove sort of picks up a different color. And they also look a little bit dark because there's graphite underneath that. So wherever I decide I don't like the color that overlapped, I just can wipe that back with rubbing alcohol on a wet wipe and then reapply. Because even though that white paint is dry, it's quite smooth, so I can lift color off with rubbing alcohol. So now that it's completely dry, I thought I'd show you, here's another technique you could do with a wet wipe. And if there's not enough difference happening, spray more rubbing alcohol on it. But what I'm showing you is that you can lift off some of that surface detail even when it's dry. I will paint over this, but I wanted to show you what can happen. And I also wanted to show you that right there in the top corner, you can see that when I painted the paint over top, the white paint, and then I covered it with matte medium. Some of it was a thinner layer there, and some of the surface of the paper showed up more. So I'm just showing you that when you rub things back, it's really fun because you can get completely different patterns below from whatever you did before you added the paint. So even though I added matte medium and some paint and some white fluid paint randomly around the page, when you wipe the colors off after, it reveals how random all of that was. So I'm just wiping away more what I want to do is see how much of the grooves stay a color, and I'm lifting a lot of color off. You could, if you like it like this, nice and pastel-y, you could put another glaze of matte medium with a little more white in it and paint over everything and make it quite dreamy. But I'm going for a bolder effect. But I wanted to show you in this lesson that I've got a good strong background there. I can apply paints, I can wipe them back. I could actually put another color of opaque, heavy paint it down and then scrape through. And when I scrape through, the white areas would show through. The possibilities are endless. But in this case, I'm still using my high flow acrylic semi-transparent, and I'm doing it more as a glaze. Now, even if I was to use a toothpick and scrape through this layer, you would see a little bit of pattern, but not as much because it's a very glazy, translucent kind of color. It wouldn't be as dramatic. Again, I've done my grooves. Now my lesson is to show you about glazing. All of this is inspiration. Later on, when I look at this book, even though I will see a finished page, I'm going to remember what I did to make this, and it will inspire me just like that. And that's the whole purpose of this book. Every page, you're going to think, why am I jumping around so much, doing so many different things? But it's because I'm learning and exploring and playing. So a lot of this is technique that I do often, but there will be some pages where I try something new that I haven't even done yet. And that's the whole point of this book. It's practice, it's learning, and then when it's done, I'll be happy to have it as inspiration. So that Nickel Azo Gold was sitting on top of a previous Indian yellow. So now when I scrape through, you can see that it is working, even though it's transparent. It is revealing the yellow underneath. And the only way that will work is if you do it before that transparent layer dries. So I'm having fun with a slightly, again, it's a different effect than the first grooves because I don't have heavy paint over it. So it's very subtle scratches versus those ovals that I did into the thick white. I hope you understand what I mean. There are different layers and different effects, and you can see with those very fine scratches that it's picking up whatever colors. Some areas it's yellow, some areas it's pink, but it's picking up whatever was below. I thought I'd just put a little bit more pink up in that area. And when I do that, it picks up a little bit, puts more pink into the scratches. Isn't this fun? There's so many things you could do. Like I say, you could do a background page and then take a toothpick and just scrape a quote or something, and that would be really cool as well on this page. Look at how textured that paper is now. It's just like a canvas. This is dry, by the way. I really love the busy patterns and how they change between thick grooves and light scratches. It's really, really fun. This is a really good complement that I would like to use that blue. I'd also like to do something different. I don't normally do obvious objects on my abstracts like the dragonfly, but I just feel like using this as a background, and again, I'm just trying something new. So I'm going to use blue as my accent, and later on I'm going to stamp a few dragonflies, and I want to tint those dragonflies a bit of this blue as well, because you know dragonflies quite often have a very fluorescent look of blue to them. Before I do that, though, I want to put a glaze of blue. It's going to sit on the surface because there's so much paint on that surface. And then I'm going to help that along. I don't want it to end abruptly like that. I want to coax it to be fuzzy and foggy. So I do that by adding spray and tipping the book and letting it dribble down. This is really cool having all those dribble marks, but I want to go for more of a cloudy effect. So I just gave it another spray, and we'll look at that, how fun that is. And I want it to dry like that. When it does dry, and I'm just weighting down the corners so that it stays flat. I want that blue to spread evenly and not curl because of the corners of the pages. And I'm just lifting a little bit lightly on the bottom because I want that to disappear. I want the blue to be in the upper half and not. I don't mind those dribbles on the far right, but the rest of it, I like how cloudy it is. Now, when it evaporates and dries, it'll look a little more dry, less blue than that, or less milky. There you go. I think that's a lot of fun. And some of the blue has gone into those grooves now, which I think is fun. So now that it's bone dry, I want to stamp 3 dragonflies around the page. This is, I guess, what you could call an abstract landscape. I'm using the permanent ink again. I don't mind that they're going to show up very boldly because this is a top layer and I want the dragonflies to very much sit on the top surface of this page. There you go. Beautiful. I use that clear pad to press it down when it's on the page right next, because I don't want my fingers to, I want it to be a very all over pattern. And so that's the best way to do it, is to put the acrylic pad down on top of it and then press, and you get an even registration of that stamp. Isn't that fun? Again, I don't usually in my abstracts do real obvious objects, but I just felt like dragonflies today. Again, my work is always intuitive. You could stamp flowers, anything that you've got at this point. So I do like it as it is, but I want to highlight more of that blue in the bodies of the dragonflies. 2 things. It makes the dragonflies interesting with the blue, and it brings some of that blue down. It makes it more interesting to have the eye travel around the page with the colors. What I've got is a box underneath so that I can bring this closer to my face so that when I do this work, I'm not sticking my head in the way of the camera. So that's why I did that. So I'm zooming right in on the work here. I've got the finest brush I own. It's brand new. And I'm not even pressing on it. I'm barely touching the page with the point of the brush because it is so delicate. At this point, I love doing the work on this at this point in my work because, again, I already know what the painting is. I don't have to overthink anything. I'm just coloring now. The dragonfly probably has black eyes, but I'm going to make them blue because I want a lot of the blue to be obvious. And that's my artist prerogative. I suppose it would be neat to add, but that blue that I dabbed there isn't their eyeballs anyway. It's just part of the head. The eyeballs are still on top. So I'm just trying to keep it delicate. And I'm painting right over top of that oval scrape so that the dragonfly sits on top of that scrape. Now I did paint the eyes there. Later on, I'll fix that. So I'm just carrying on with the body of the dragonfly. And as I do this, I'm trying to decide what to do about the wings. As you know, with dragonflies, if you look at them, the wings are pretty much black, thready, webby wings, very transparent. So it's not as if I have to color them, but I'm just trying to decide as I work on the piece what I'll do about the wings. In the meantime, I'm just busy coloring the blue. That blue is such a good complementary color to these orange and reds. I'm barely putting the brush down because I really need the finest point at the tip of the brush. So I'm just barely touching the page and I'm not pushing down on the brush. A lot of fun. If you had some acrylic fine point markers, you could possibly color with those instead. This is the last dragonfly. It's going to appear differently because it's on top of so much yellow. It's going to really pop forward. I did speed this up. I don't like you to get bored. You get the idea of what I'm doing. So in these kinds of cases, I do speed up. And by the way, I've got to be mindful that my palm of my hand does not touch any of this wet blue paint. Look how fun that is already. I am loving this. It just makes all of the blue make sense by coloring those in. And I'm just touching up a couple areas of the blue where I want them to show up as well. It's almost like the dragonflies are playing with these bubbles. If you want to make a story out of this, that's what's coming to my mind. It looks like I'm touching it with my hand, but I'm not touching the butterfly. I was resting the palm of my hand away from it. If you wanted to, and I did that because I'm filming this and I didn't want to have to stop and start. But if you really wanted to be careful, you could do the dragonfly bodies, let it completely dry, and then do this part. So I do have to be careful that I don't touch my hand down on the paper. It'd be easier also to just turn the book around and around and around. But if I did that, I'd have to keep adjusting it for my for the camera. Oh, I'm loving this. I didn't think I was going to do a nature scene like this, but it is what it is. I always do intuitively whatever I think the painting wants to be. I'm not doing every part of every oval. I'm only highlighting parts of the oval with the blue because I like the movement. Now I'm deciding, you know what? Let's have some fun with the scribbles down below. I want it to look like that dragonfly is behind grass popping out of it. So in order to show up, I'm using a Quinacridone Red, and it's a lot darker than the Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold. And I'm also, even though I've watered it down to make it fluid, I'm putting a dab of full strength out of the bottle there as well. And for the most part with the grass, this part coming up now, I'm only touching my brush in the very heavy paste part because I really want the grass to pop forward and hide parts of the dragonfly. It's not perfect. I'm not doing the most perfect job, but that's okay. This is not going on a wall. This is my inspiration book. I suppose I could have done that with a pen, a marker pen instead. But I find if I use markers, um, and if you go and spray it with a fixative or put gel over, sometimes it actually changes color and goes really funny, odd shape, odd colors. So again, a fine tip marker right now, like a Sharpie, would be a great tool to use in here. But the other problem as well with markers, if you put markers or even pens, nice, fine, expensive pens, and try and draw on top of acrylic paint, even though it's dry, you end up ruining the tip of that marker and you ruin it for future use. So that's why I'm just sticking with a fine brush. Again, I'm trying to make it look like this dragonfly's in the grass. In doing that, it also, for the final finished product, it draws the eye down to the bottom of the page. This is just coloring to me, and this is completely mindfulness. This is why I do this channel. It's for my soul. It just keeps my mind off of things. Like I've had a rough year with pain issues. I don't need to get into it. But the purpose of this channel is to show you that you can do things like this just to get lost, just to take time out. Right now, I'm really tired of watching the news, and I don't get political, so I'm not even going to go there. But it's just very upsetting for me to see what's happening around the world. And this is a good way to keep my mind off of that. I got enough problems to deal with. I don't need to deal with all of that as well. And turning to my art helps me a lot. And as you've noticed, I'm not teaching any of you how to draw. You don't have to be an artist. I'm not teaching you how to draw anything. I'm teaching you how to use tools. If you need to draw a dragonfly, that's great if you want to, but if you'd rather buy a stamp and stamp it, by all means. The purpose of this is not teaching you how to be an artist, a sketcher. It's to teach you how to just get lost and create art by just playing. And that is the purpose of my channel. I love doing it for you every week, and I love showing you all my tricks. So that's really dark. The full strength was really quite dark and effective. I'm going to pick up a few strands of grass in the left there. Again, I'm watching that my hand doesn't touch the wet ones below it. Again, this is just to create a little bit of movement across the bottom. I've really added dimension now to this painting. Now I'm going to mix up the heavy paste with the very fluid watered down because I want a lighter effect. I decided I want to have fun with these scribbly swirls, but I want them to be more transparent and less obvious. And that way they look like they're more in the background and the grass is in the foreground. And again, I'm speeding this up. They're very transparent and add a different dimension. Make it quite dreamy, but fun and feisty. Like I say, I sped that up. And I'm not doing every one of them. I'm only just doing some of them. And I hope you can see that this really allows a little more dimension to that background. It gives it more layers of depth. A lot of fun. And then you got to know when to stop. I decided, because it's very transparent, and I'm not using the tip of my brush, I'm actually pushing it down on the page to spread it out in a very soft, delicate way. I thought it would be fun to bring out some of that color and balance that darker color of the grass throughout the page so that it all makes sense. So it's not as if dragonflies have that color of wings, but mine do today. It looks quite dark, but really in reality it was quite a thin glaze. There's a little bit on the body that I thought I'd fill in with the dark color. There we go. Now the only thing that's bothering me is that blue background where it's all fuzzy on the page. It's quite chalky looking, and I'd like it to be a little bit more bright and cheerful. So later on I'm going to do a final coat of medium, but this time I'm going to do a gloss, and that should really make the page pop a little bit more and be a little bit more lively and fun in color. So this is completely dry. All I need to do now is make it pop forward because, like I say, it looks too flat and chalky in the background, and yet the rest aren't chalky. Again, it's completely dry, otherwise I would be smudging all that color. So make sure that you patiently wait. And then I thought, oh, I forgot to take that tape off. I better pull that off. And there it just, like I say, the tape covers the coil, but it leaves a nice clean edge on the inside there. Makes it look like a painting instead of just painting in a book. I'm giving a nice thick coat to liven up the whole page. I'm going up and down first, and then I go left to right. And when I go left to right in a new direction, I press a little softer on the brush so that when the gloss medium settles, you won't see any brush strokes. So there you have it. I really enjoyed this. It's not my usual style at all. I don't usually do cute butterflies and dragonflies and things like that in my abstracts, but this is a book about exploring and trying new options, and it might inspire me for something different down the road. So thank you again for watching. I enjoy doing this for you. Please subscribe, like, and comment. I do watch the comments. For example, do you like what I did with the butterflies? Tell me what you think. I don't mind. Anyway, enjoy your day. I hope you try this. And I try to get a new posting out every Friday, so we'll see what happens on the next page. Have a great day.